Today's date is March 28th, 2025. We're here for the oral history program, and my name is Jacob Steckel. I'm the archival assistant for Warren County, and I'm here with...
I'm Barney Wright, actually Bernard H. Wright Jr., but everyone calls me Barney. My father wore wireframe glasses, and his buddies called him Barney Google because they all read the comic strip character at that time.
You just reminded them of...
Yes. He wore glasses. I was born May the 17th, 1948 in Wilmington, Delaware, which was across the river from where my parents were living at the time. I am the oldest of three sons that they had. My father was a chemical engineer with the DuPont Company.
Ooh.
The DuPont Company has it was basically based in the Wilmington area, around Wilmington, and has a large facility just north of the area where the New Jersey Turnpike ends and crosses the Delaware River into Delaware, and I-95 continues to run south. That, when I was growing up, was always labeled the largest organic chemical facility in the free world, because they didn't know what was going on in Russia, so they didn't know how big things were there. That facility is where DuPont developed Teflon and a number of other things. My father worked for all my life in the area there at the plant that made tetraethyl lead, the gasoline additive that the EPA banned in the early '60s. There's stories about that, but that was basically his professional career.
Sounds like he might have been frustrated by the EPA.
He was
point.
very much so.
Understandably so, if he put all this work into...
Well, they made a lot of it. The chemicals that they replace it with to improve gasoline performance produce substantially more smog creating material than the lead does. You don't get lead, but you get basically four times the same volume of smog creating material in the gasoline exhaust. But someone made a decision, and that's the way it went. I grew up in the town immediately south of the main road crossing the Delaware River at Pennsville. Graduated from high school there. Went to college at the College of Worcester in Worcester, Ohio, where I met my wife and majored in religion. Graduated from there in 1970. Majored in religion, enough hours for a major in economics. I got into a short-term mission program with the Board of Missions of the Methodist Church. They sent me to work in a children's home in Georgia, and I'd gotten a water safety instructor certificate. They needed someone there to be a lifeguard at the pool that they had for these emotionally disturbed kids. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I was sent there, and to provide some counseling for them in their schoolwork and various stuff. After about 6 months, the director of the home there and I agreed that I wasn't particularly good for the kids because I didn't have the skills to handle emotionally disturbed teenagers, and they weren't particularly good for me because they were driving me nuts. And so the board, the missions board, transferred me to New Orleans to work in a community center doing community development work that they had started a team doing that in the French Quarter in New Orleans. And so I lived in the French Quarter for the rest of that term of service, and then by luck or chance or misadventure, one of those, I decided to go to law school. Went to law school at Tulane in New Orleans. During that time, I'd stayed in touch with my wife. We both, frankly, had gotten engaged to other people, and that had fallen apart. We reconnected, and between my second and third year of law school, we married, and she moved to New Orleans and supported us while I finished there. After I graduated, after I graduated, we moved back here to Southwest Ohio. My wife's family. My wife is the 5th generation of her family in Warren County. Her grandfather was Harley Peck with the Peck's Dahlia Farm.
Oh, okay.
And so we moved here, and through a connection, her father at that point was a math professor at Miami of Ohio, and through connections with some of their friends in Oxford, I was able to get an interview with the head of the trust department at Fifth Third, and so got a job there as the tax specialist in the trust department. Worked there for basically 2 years. Then in May of '77, we moved to town because on Easter in '77, her grandmother died. We moved into the house that Sarah's great-grandfather had built for her grandmother when she got married in 1914. And by doing that, relieved her mother of the need to clean it out and get rid of everything that was there and sell it. And so she rented it to us, but kept all the family stuff there without having to clean out. And we had a house. About a week after we moved in, I was called into a meeting at Fifth Third with an attorney from Lebanon who I knew of, heard through family conversation,
Sure.
and a senior officer of the bank. Marvin Young was sitting across the table from me, and he had a substantial account that he'd set up where the beneficiary had died, and I was called in to discuss what would happen in the distribution of that tax-wise. And so I went through that, and it was a half an hour conversation, whatnot, and that kind of ended up, and Marvin kind of pushed back from the table, and he looked at me and he said, I'm a director of our little bank up in Lebanon, and we're looking for a bright young fella who might come in and take over our trust department. How could we get the word out about that? and so I said, well, I guess you'd have to let people know you were looking and see who put their hand up.
Fair enough.
Well, I mean, come on, there's a senior officer of the bank sitting at the end of the table. I can't say, I'm really interested, hire me.
Exactly. You had to go to the back.
And he had heard that Sarah's grandmother's granddaughter and her husband, who worked at a bank, were moving into the house. In fact, it was, the house is just around the corner from where he was living, and so it's all in the neighborhood. And so the next day I called him and set up an appointment, interviewed for the job, and they hired me. And I started at the bank on July the 7th of 1977 and worked there for 37 years.
I was going to say.
There were jokes about the fact that they hired me as the head of the trust department, and when I retired, I was head of the trust department. And the comment was, 37 years and you really haven't made a lot of progress.
Oh.
But from that point of view, yeah, you could argue that. On the other hand, when I started, I had a part-time assistant to process things. We had about $3 million in trust assets, and we were losing money. As a business line, the trust department was losing money. When I retired, I had 15 people reporting to me. We had a little over $250 million in trust assets, another $100 million in assets in a brokerage program that were generating fees for the bank. And I was also responsible for managing the bank's investment portfolio of $350 million, as well as being an executive officer of the bank and in charge of the bank's relationship with their transfer agent, stock transfer agent, and various other things. I was on the bank's executive committee at that point. So, it developed nicely.
Yeah. You have plenty
But-
to do, and I mean, at that point, if you wanted to go for, I imagine you wanted to be stable at anything. Right?
Well, you know, it was a good gig. Barney Young brought a lot of business to the bank, particularly in the early years. I think in a lot of ways, Howard Wilson was running the bank, Steve Wilson's father. Howard, I think, brought someone in to take over the trust department because Barney Young wanted an active trust department at the bank. But Barney brought a lot of business to us, and that helped make us profitable. But what really put us over the top was the family that got me the interview at Fifth Third about 3 years after I came to work at the bank, moved their business from Fifth Third to LCNB. And when we got that chunk of business in, we went over 10 million in assets in the department, and that moved us to where we were generating more income than we were spending, and we made serious money for the bank after that, every year in and year out. But you know, it was a lot of it was finding needs that we could profitably serve and take care of, and then bringing good people in and adding people to the team that could contribute well. It was interesting, and you know, I enjoyed doing it. There was every day was a little bit different. There were different problems that would show up that required figuring out how to take care of people and how to. We were able to minister to folks, I think, really well. We provided a service and a level of confidence that everything was being taken care of properly for them when they were getting to the place where they couldn't take care of themselves. And the other thing the thing that really was important to me, not so much early on, but especially as I got farther and farther into my career, the bank was very interested in having officers of the bank involved in community organizations, because that helps tie the bank to the community and gives the bank essentially information about who's doing things in the community and how things are going.
Yeah.
So I was very early on. I was on the board of the Warren County Historical Society. Moved on to become a board member at United Way they've got a cycle that you rotate off. I was on the board and was the treasurer, and then was a financial advisor for many years after that. Following that, I got involved with the Area Progress Council for a number of years, and was part of their efforts to create an endowment through Project Excellence that makes awards to outstanding public school teachers in the county. And out of all of that ended up on the college task force that was set up that really ended up bringing Sinclair to Warren County. The reason I got on the college task force because I was involved with Area Progress Council, but outside of this for years I've been, in addition to things I was doing kind of through the bank's connections, I was also on a kind of parallel track of board service. I was involved in a number of leadership roles in the church where we were active. I ended up getting involved with some missionaries and ended up on the board of an interdenominational missionary sending society. As a result of those things and some connections, I was elected to the board of trustees of the college where our son went to college, at Montreat College in Montreat, North Carolina. Coming out of the college task force thing, there was a pilot program with regard to the possibility of creation of a community college in Warren County. Tom Rega got that passed through the legislature. That required that there be a board of trustees to explore that. It was a 2-year pilot program. And there were going to be 2 trustees appointed by the governor, and I think 7 by the county commissioners.
Mm-hmm.
And so I applied to get appointed to that board, and I think the only reason I got it was because nobody else who applied had ever served on a college board. But I could say I was a trustee of Monterey College, and so bingo, I got it.
There you go. You got prior experience.
I got now a private college and a public a public school, very, very different things.
Oh, absolutely.
But you know, it worked. Then what happened was 2 other appointees. You know, we knew we were appointed, but we hadn't had an organizational meeting because the governor hadn't gotten around to appointing his people. Okay,
Oh.
and so 2 of the other appointees got together and agreed that they were going to nominate me to become the chairman because they didn't want to end up as the chairman of this board. And so they did that to me.
Wow. Okay.
And so now I'm the chairman of the pilot program for a community college in Warren County, and we've got no money, we've got no staff. The legislation with regard to how community college trustees are supposed to operate is all written on the premise that you've got full-time staff that are able to do things like give public notice to the papers about your meetings, publish your minutes, and
Yeah.
on and on and on.
A secretary for that or something.
Right, well, a secretary, a treasurer, didn't have any of that. We just put it together with duct tape and baling wire.
Oh,
and as the chairman, you know, I'm the guy that's got to try to make all this stuff happen because somebody's going to come back looking at me.
they were trying to give you a what do the people in Congress called a poison pill?
Who knows? Who knows?
I don't want to say anything.
We, but we got through it, and out of that, we proposed. We wrote a report to the legislature, and working with Sinclair and Miami and the other surrounding community colleges,
Mm-hmm.
it became clear that the only place that was really interested in really providing significant service to Warren County was Sinclair. They put money into the program as we were in the trial period. They ramped up and started really offering classes at the vocational school. They were the ones that put skin in the game, and so the proposal went back to the legislature that Sinclair designated service district be increased to include Warren as well as Montgomery County. And part of that included then that the county would appoint 1 member to the Sinclair board, and the governor would appoint 1 member who are Warren County residents to represent them. And so the county commissioners appointed me as their representative to the Sinclair board. And that's how I got on the Sinclair board and was there for 12 years. And during that time, we worked to basically expand the availability of community college courses in Warren County, which ended up with establishing the campus down in Mason. And so then, you know, all of that's rolling along. I retired from the bank at the end of June in 2014. opened a law office down the street, and Ann Crabiel rented me an office in her space, and I had actually had a separate entrance, so it wasn't like we were not partners in any way. I rented space from her and had a entirely separate operation. And I wasn't getting much business in. I was trying, I knew quite a bit about estate planning. That's what I'd done. That's what I'd worked with. And we got a little bit, but it wasn't very much. And I was aware that I needed to have more to do. I was beginning to think about things that I shouldn't be spending time on, and decided that I needed to start looking around. And less than a week after I had that realization, Jim Almond approached me and said, I'm thinking about retiring as county treasurer. Would you be interested in running for the job? And I said yes. So did some research at that time, and was concerned about the possibility of a conflict in public roles between being county treasurer and on various other public boards. I was on the law library board. I was on the Sinclair board, and the county ethics office said that I shouldn't be the county treasurer while I was on the law library board, because I could influence their deposits, which is incorrect. The treasurer, the auditor handles their deposit account. As the treasurer, I have no idea how much money the law library has. But I thought that was wrong. But I shrugged. The Secretary of State, what was it, Secretary of State? I forget. The county, the state attorney general. I asked the question about whether it was a conflict of interest to be on the Sinclair board as well as the county treasurer here. And in a 21-page legal opinion that came back, that was an impermissible conflict. I still disagree with that too. It's really very simple. I can just recuse myself from anything related. Sinclair, because of the type of community college it is, can request a levy inside their service district.
I see.
And the county treasurer is a member of the Budget Commission. The Budget Commission makes a decision about whether any levy proposed is appropriate or inappropriate. Well, I can recuse myself from that decision. That won't cripple the Budget Commission. There are two other members. They can, if they both vote yes, that's fine. If one of them votes no, then that's a no, because there's no approval. But the Attorney General said it's a conflict of interest, and so my term on the Sinclair board was up in June of 16, and I was not I declined to be reappointed at that time, because I was going to. I had won the primary, and I was going to be in the general election in the fall of 16, and so I had to give that up. That was a serious price. Everything you do has benefits and prices. That for the run for county treasurer, that was a serious price as far as I was concerned. Yeah. But the other side of that is that the commissioners were smart enough to appoint Mike Gagan to take my place. Mike was the guy at Area Progress Council who made the college task force study go before we got to. He was also one of my co-trustees on the pilot program board,
Uh-huh.
but he was the guy who chaired the program that got the interest started and moved Representative Rega to get legislation approved to create the pilot program. And so, you know, I think that was an excellent decision on their part. And I know he continues to serve as Warren County's commissioner-appointed representative on the Sinclair board now. So, you know, in retirement, I have continued to be involved in the community in various things.
And that was the first time you retired, technically.
Yes, the first time. The first time.
Mm-hmm.
I've been friends for a number of years with the lady who was the administrator at Quaker Heights up in Waynesville.
Yeah.
And after I retired from the bank, I said, I've got enough time now. I can. She'd asked me multiple times prior to that to come on the Quaker Heights board, and I'd always said I got too much to do. I can't add that. But I said I think I can do that now, and so I joined the Quaker Heights board and worked with some really good people up from around Waynesville.
Yeah.
One of the things that was real clear about that situation was because Quaker Heights has a very high proportion of their residents who are on Medicaid, they had been spending their endowment. They're losing money because the Medicaid reimbursements are not enough to cover the cost of care.
Oh.
And they accept donations, and you know that's all well and good, but it hasn't been enough. And so Gus Edwards and I think really were the ones who led the charge. But the reality was, you know, they were going to run out of money.
Yeah.
And at that point, you know, how does this ministry continue? So we were actively looking for a place, an organization to merge with that could provide additional resources and support. Things like you get reimbursed by Medicaid for all of the services that you provide to a resident who's on Medicaid. Well, if you don't document properly all the things you're doing for them, you don't get paid for them.
Right.
And we had someone who was also doing other things, trying to come up with the proper documentation for these things, and we recognize that large organizations have a whole procedure for documenting things and a staff of people who make sure that the documentation gets done right and Medicaid is billed properly.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, those were the things we were looking for to pursue the ministry. And eventually we were able to work with Ohio, what is now Ohio Living, what was Ohio Presbyterian Homes, to become the single member operator of Quaker Heights and provide the backup that frankly, I mean, wasn't long after that COVID hit, and now all of a sudden anyone that was doing nursing homes was losing money hand over fist. But we got Quaker Heights under an umbrella that continues that ministry in that community, and you know, I consider that a big win. A good thing we've done.
Especially at that time. I was working as a house painter, and I was actually going down to Mason, one of the Mason nursing homes, nursing communities to paint.
Okay.
And that was, you could see all the stress that they were under at the time, and
yeah,
I can only imagine going through the administrative side.
And the other thing I got involved in outside of work was I got on the board of the public television. Public television in Southwest Ohio is basically Cincinnati and Dayton each had separate television stations, and they merged about 11 years ago.
Oh.
And so the umbrella organization is called Public Media Connect, but it actually runs both Think TV in Dayton as well as WCET in Cincinnati, and the Oxford station is also part of that group. They have a very substantial operation. They're a leading public TV contributor to the country. The thing that I discovered after I got on that board is a very substantial part of the money they raise and the work they do goes into creating educational resources that don't ever hit over the air, but go to an online to a site that's available to the public at large for free, particularly teachers, with age-appropriate instruction with regard to basically anything between kindergarten and 12th grade, and available free. And they create a lot of content that goes into that library of information. They're really a remarkable operation. It's been a privilege to be involved in that. As a result of the fact that Jim Ahman had been president of the County Treasurers Association of Ohio, which is sort of the professional organization of county treasurers, I got involved in that organization through their executive committee. I ended up serving as the co-chair of the legislative committee. I testified up in Columbus. We got a little bit of legislation passed to broaden what we could do with the investment portfolio. I figured out early on every extra dollar of income that I could earn with the investment portfolio for the county was a dollar that went into the general fund to be used for public purposes that nobody had to pay a tax for. It's found money. And so the investment restrictions on what you can do that have been established by the code are substantial. I mean, it really is a very limited range of things. You're not going to invest in any stocks. It's all fixed income. It's all really very conservative. But with a small modification, we got a little broader range of things to do without really without a comparable increase in the amount of risk that was being taken. And I worked to make that happen, and I was part of the testimony in Columbus that was our process to get that done. So I feel like I've been able to contribute and help things out there. So it's been an interesting run. There's always new challenges. People don't call up saying, "Gee, I'm so glad you sent me this letter, and I'm happy to pay extra taxes this year." I don't get those kind of phone calls.
No, never will.
But we provide. I think we're one of the most efficiently run county treasurer's offices in the state, and I don't mean to throw anybody particularly under the bus, but my example. I look at Butler County.
Mm-hmm.
They have about 50% more. They have about 150 parcels of real estate. We have 110, of which about 90% are taxable. So functionally 100,000 parcels that we collect tax on. Mm-hmm. They have a staff that at one time was 22 people and is now down to, I believe, about 15.
Oh.
we do everything with our operation with the treasurer and 8. So I think we get more value out of things the way we run things here, and that's less money spent on collecting the tax, which means more money for other things for the public here. That's what we work at. We try to make that go. That's why we're here. That's what we've worked to accomplish. It's, the numbers are staggering. First half collection this year was $316 million. We'll probably be over $600 million for the year. Generally, you get more in the first half than the second half, because there are people who pay for the whole year at a go. They just don't want to be bothered, which is fine with me. I felt that way myself.
Fair enough.
If your house is paid off, this is just one more thing that, if I pay it now, I don't have to worry about it. So
precisely.
And so, I think those are the other thing that I've noticed about Warren County that is different than what I hear other county treasurers talking about is inside the county, elected officials in general, I believe, work very well together. I know particularly that the treasurer's office and the auditor's office here have a close working relationship where everybody gets along. There are other counties that don't have that at all, where the county elected officials are trading public information requests back and forth with each other. This is this is the kind of ludicrous stuff that just is a waste of time and energy that really often accomplishes little to nothing, and in general just incites irritation on the part of the public. I think we do a good job of avoiding that here. People get along. People figure out how to do, we're on a team, we're working together. There are only 3 counties in the state that have a AAA credit rating.
I never heard of that.
Delaware, Franklin, and us. Delaware and us because of economic growth. Franklin basically has a AAA credit rating because the state government's there, and state government pays for a lot of stuff in the metro area that helps the county look good. But we've got a large investment portfolio because the county commissioners have been diligent about not spending every nickel that comes in every year. We have no general fund debt because we save up and then we do things like the jail, like the new court building. We handle our, we don't mortgage the future of our taxpayers in the ways that other people do. The jail financing, I think, is a great example. They had money saved, they got a bid, they borrowed enough money to pay for the jail, and they figured that they'd repay it over 5 years. So they didn't borrow money for 30 years and pay a 30-year rate. They borrowed for 5 years and paid a much lower rate. In addition to that, because they're a AAA credit rating, we got the best rates possibly available in the market, and we paid that off with that extra 0.5% on the sales tax. Sales tax, that's which brings up an interesting point. Approximately 60% of the sales tax is paid by people who are not residents of Warren County.
60%.
Something like that. Yeah, right about that. Interestingly, approximately 60% of the occupants of the jail are non-residents. They get picked up for and jailed for violations here. So residents use 40% of the jail, paid for 40% of it. There's an interesting rough justice there that is beneficial to the average resident in Warren County. That I'm convinced a lot of residents have no idea how well their local government is run on their behalf.
Well, if it runs so well, then you just don't think about it, right?
Although, frankly, I get letters from people about how terrible it is for the taxes they pay. I mean, they there's a lot of irrationality out there. I mean, I think everybody wants to know when they dial 911 and ask for a policeman because there's something suspicious going on, that there'll be somebody there. Or they call 911 because the dinner got caught on fire on the stove. They want a fire truck there right now. These are the things that the local taxes pay for. Potholes in the street, the stuff close to home is what these pay for. This is not going to Washington and coming back. But people don't separate that. I have people send me letters regularly. I use none of these services. Boulder Dash. That's just not true.
They don't use the roads? I mean,
yeah. And frankly, even if they don't send kids to school, the fact that they live in a district where the schools are of a high quality, that adds to the value of their property. And people just don't seem to register that when it's inconvenient. I don't know any other way to put it. That's just the way it is.
That's fair. Has that been has that been the biggest challenge working with the public, would you say, is trying to talk to different folks about understanding where their money goes to? Is that a difficult...
What's difficult about that is they don't want to hear it. It's a message that they don't want to get. And so it's rare. It rarely registers. Or I have the sense that it rarely registers. I've never had anyone tell me, I appreciate understanding that. So that's the only thing I have to judge with. I think I have joked about the fact that I really only wear black hats now because I'm clearly the bad guy. But I'm just a messenger. I mean, they and their neighbors voted on the taxes where they live. Frankly, if they want to look around, there are places, if they're in what they consider a high tax area, the difference between the highest tax areas in Warren County and the lowest are basically, the high tax area basically twice what the lowest tax areas are for the same value of property, okay? So if you want to, you can move out of a high tax into a low tax, and the services that will be provided there, and particularly since about 70% of what you pay in taxes goes to the local schools, what the schools offer are substantially less. So no extracurricular programs, pay to play for all of the extracurricular sports activities, one foreign language, minimum offerings for things like mathematics and history. I mean, they offer the bare minimum requirement that the state requires for the schools. Where you get into the higher districts, you get things like Mandarin Chinese and Spanish and French and Latin and on and on. I mean, the world changes. There are after-school programs for drama, poetry, France, there are field trips. There are, there's no extra charge to play football. It's a whole. There's a whole different array because there's money to pay for that, and the local voters in that district have decided that that's the kind of opportunity they want to provide to the young people in their community, and their houses are going to sell for more on a square footage basis than the ones who are, in the boonies.
You get what you pay for.
And what there are prices associated with options, but people don't want to hear that. That means I have to change. That means I have to think. That means I can't just be on autopilot. And I think a lot of people just don't want to have to think. But then they get to live with their consequences too, just like all the rest of us do.
Yeah, just like all the rest of us do. Do you find working with the public rewarding in any way? It doesn't sound like it's very direct, but...
When I was involved as a teenager in scouting, one of the basic principles that we had every place was we were all responsible to leave a place in better shape than it was when we got there.
Yeah.
So if it was a meeting room, everything was picked up. All the chairs are put back where they belong. Anything that fell on the floor is thrown away or put away, and it's cleaned up and left. If it was a campsite and the fire pit needed to be redug, or the path coming in had some erosion showing, build a step in, rebuild the fire pit, make sure there's firewood available and ready. All of that kind of stuff was presented as absolutely the right way to live, and really over the years in all the things that I've been involved in, I've tried to keep in mind that my ultimate goal is to leave this organization or this space where I'm living in better shape, to the extent that I'm able, in better shape than it was when I got here, so that the people who come after me have a better situation to work from. And so that's, that really has been a driver for me all down the line. That's why I think we're here, is to accomplish that.
It's a fine way of putting it.
Well, it has worked for me. That's that's really, that in my mind helps deal with the folks that are crosswise. I mean, they've got their problems. I've got problems too. I try not to take the crazy things that are said personally.
Yeah.
That's I learned that selling stuff door to door.
Yeah.
As a youngster, I mean, yeah. No is not a statement about me. It was a statement about their choices, and so if that's what they want to choose, then that's their choice, and I make my choices too. And I think that's, for me, that's been a healthier response than
internalizing.
Than taking this as a personal attack, because I believe in large measure it's not. I mean, they may actually intend it that way, but it as far as I'm concerned, it's not. I mean, I have a role, I play. I do what I'm responsible for doing. I foreclose on people. I'm a bad guy. That's what the state requires me to do. If they make a choice not to pay their taxes, I still have to collect it. And the tools that are available to me are ask, and failing that, we'll go to court. You know, that's what's there. Here we go.
It's tough.
Well, you know, means my name is on a lot of court filings.
I'll probably find you a lot back there than in the warehouse.
Well, you know, you certainly can look them up. They're there. We have a much lower foreclosure rate, delinquency rate than most counties in the state. But I think part of that is we're a wealthier county. We don't have a decayed urban core somewhere that collects that. Part of that is I think we've educated people that, you know, no, you really can't dodge this bullet. It is here, and we're going to pursue it. You're not gonna duck this and think it'll just go away, because it won't. And so that's just life.
It's one of the certainties, right?
Yeah, I mean, I can't make it go away. I haven't got a magic wand, so we will pursue collection. And if you can't pay, then you're going to have to realign your life.
Yeah, that just is what it is.
Right.
So what is your day-to-day out of going into the treasurer's office? Because we've gone to all the different things that you accomplish, but when you go in there, like say this morning, what was on your mind that you had to do?
Well, this is a seasonal business.
Yes.
Twice a year, we collect a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
When we're collecting money, I'm worrying about getting this money in safely. That involves having things set. I mean, we've got the office set up so we're relatively secure physically for that kind of stuff, but we got to pay attention to that. We end up getting a lot of cash. Getting that safely to the bank is one thing that I do every day. That when I'm here now, I don't have to be there every day, but one of the things I worry about doing is making sure that happens safely. Mm-hmm. So particularly when we have large sums of money, we get a police escort to go to the bank. That when you're taking a 6-figure number in cash to the bank, I'm not taking a casual stroll down the street.
No, I wouldn't either.
Okay, I'm not going in my car without somebody who's got a firearm watching me.
Yeah, and that's not just all in a suitcase. Imagine goodness.
So, so that's an important element of I
absolutely.
Yeah. After we get collection, we have lots of people that pay late, and there's a procedure where you can ask to have your late payment penalty waived. Mm-hmm. Each of those, I have to review each of those applications, of which we have right now several hundred. And so what I'm doing when I come in this week is getting a stack of remission applications, looking up information about each applicant and how they paid in the past, and whether their application presents an excuse for late payment that the state in its code has recognized as a valid reason that they should have the penalty remitted, and writing that up and referring that to the county's Board of Revision for the board's consideration. Okay, so that's when I'm thinking about what I'm doing this week. That's what I'm doing, pretty much straight on through. And of course, then we've got a relatively new system with what there are some things we'd like to have it do more conveniently for us to make things run smoother.
Right.
I'm talking with the IT people about how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Once we're through collection and we've got remissions done, well, then there are always people that are arguing that the value of their property is set too high. I'm a member of the county's Board of Revision. We meet to consider those applications, make decisions, and you know, there's preparation for those hearings. They're the hearings themselves, and there's a decision out of that. The treasurer's also on the county budget commission. That meets each year as each of the county related agencies, also all the townships and the villages in the county that have levies, prepare budgets for the following fiscal year, and the commission, the budget commission decides whether levies are necessary, whether they're whether they're collecting too much money, if the agency is basically stockpiling money, then basically we start talking about, well, you really shouldn't collect all of the millage that the levy entitles you to. You don't need that. And so, I mean, that's part of the Budget Commission's job. So that comes out in different departments at the county, and the libraries and the townships and the villages all come up at kind of different times, and so that happens off and on throughout the year when when you're going to have those kind of hearings. A lot of times, then there's the cleanup stuff. Somebody moves, and they want their bill sent to a different address. You got to check all of that out.
Yeah.
You gotta worry about things like, we outsource the printing of our bills.
Oh.
We don't print them in house. I mean, first half we send out 57,000 bills. It's
quite a little bit. A little bit much to do upstairs.
Well, we used to, but then we moved away from that. We have a firm that does it for less than we think it would cost us to do it in-house. So you pay attention to what they're charging you, how far before you go out do you need to get the files, the computer files to them so that they can do their magic. They check to make sure they've got the 4-digit extra zip code numbers on there correctly for each address. They when they print the bills, they're printed in the order that the local delivery person is going to deliver them. And they're printed in that order, and they're sealed in a tray, and they're shipped directly from print site to that local post office where they're going to go.
Oh.
As a result of that, we get a substantially lower postal rate than the 73 cents or 72 cents that you pay now for a stamp that goes on a letter that you, as a single letter that you mail, because all of that is organized ahead of time. So, we got to make sure all those things are working together properly. We got to make sure that the addresses get changed in the system. People come in, if they're late, they may come in and pay as time goes on. People that are in bankruptcy get special privileges as a result of the federal bankruptcy law. We've got to take care of making sure those payments are proper, and we can't foreclose on those people while they're in that process, and on. When people are delinquent, they're delinquent more than 2 years, we can foreclose on them. And so we monitor that, we send them notices when they hit, you're eligible if you don't pay, da-da-da-da-da.
There you go. This is what's going to happen.
You know, there's a variety of stuff. I mean, frankly, I've got great people. One of the things that happens is when we're in collection, everybody avoids scheduling anything that's optional from happening then. So no one goes on vacation, no one schedules dental or doctor appointments then. I mean, if you got some emergency, that's different. But nothing, you know, that runs basically for 6 weeks before collection to at least 3 weeks to 4 weeks after the due date. So you got these chunks of time when everybody's there, and then in between there, everybody's gone. I mean, you know, there's always somebody gone. They're going on vacation. They're gone because they're having an operation, or they're they're doing all those other things, and so, you know, the tempo of what's happening in the office changes, and it's different every day, and it's seasonal. It comes and goes. I mean, at one point this year we had 10,000 envelopes that had come in that we hadn't been able to open and pay because people were calling, and so my people are on the phone talking to people. You can't really process payments while you're talking to somebody on the phone.
No,
so
at least not well.
they're on the phone talking to people or handling people that are walking in the door in the line that's out the door. Yeah. I'm going to the post office and getting the mail every day, and you know, we didn't do yesterday's, and now I brought another 12,000 envelopes here, or 1,200 envelopes, but added it to what was there, and it just it built up. It built up to at the end. You know, we were 10,000 envelopes sitting in the office. People are calling us saying, "I sent you payment. Have you got it?" I'm sorry, sir. I have no idea. I have no way to find it. It's lost. It's either lost at the postal service or it's lost in the trays of mail that I got sitting here and I haven't had time to process yet.
Oh my goodness.
So you know, I mean,
there's a lot.
It's a variety of stuff.
Mm. And that's what I hope to accomplish by doing these recordings, to get people to know, like, hey, this is what's going on our side.
and you know, and then the County Treasurers Association meets monthly to talk about legislation that's proposed. Really, about 80% of what the legislative committee does is look at legislation and figure out what the unintended consequences are. Because no one proposes legislation that on its face is bad legislation.
Right.
But about 90% of the legislation has consequences that will flow from passing it that no one has thought about and will be substantially problematic. And so, you know, we want to get legislation through that helps us do a better job for the county and for people. But we particularly want to make sure we don't end up with unfunded mandates that really don't do anything for anybody but satisfy some legislator who wants a report or an option available that really doesn't apply to anybody, and you know, maybe one person or one particular county or one particular situation.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago we had extensive legislation proposed in response to what was perceived as a local problem in that county. And as we did the analysis, the legislation wouldn't have, if a similar problem arose again, it wouldn't have fixed that problem and would create all kinds of other stuff down the road. And so, you know, you got to have somebody who's paying attention to these things and talking to legislators about them in order to keep it from getting worse.
Yeah, absolutely. It's tough for somebody to know all the little facets, especially anything you do with accounts and treasuring and goodness.
It goes on and on. I mean, they're there was an effort to try to make county treasurers' terms run starting the first of the year following their election in the fall. Well, you know, I'm collecting the real estate taxes for 2024. So I'm really collecting the taxes for last year because we collect a year in arrears.
Mm-hmm.
That makes some sense. The other problem is, once that collection's done, I have to certify that it was done in all areas in accordance with law. Well, if my term started the 1st of January, we've already, we closed out the prior year's collection. We're still collecting delinquent taxes from that. How does a new treasurer coming in say everything for that, when he signs a certificate at the end of August, how does he say everything going back to the prior August was done correctly when he wasn't in office until the 1st of January? And where you get contested situations where the office changes hands and the party affiliation of the party coming in is different.
Yeah.
Then you get real hard feelings in those situations.
Oh yeah, like they see all this stuff out of their control going into this rough time period where, Lord.
And so there are a lot of moving parts that you gotta. You got to recognize that it really is a mobile. Every time you touch one part, everything else has to readjust. And to know what's happening when all that happens, and to understand how that's all interrelated, is a real challenge. And frankly, that's why, from the county treasurer's point of view, there are a number of us that are on that committee, because what may not affect one county might very significantly affect any number of other counties, because we're all very different. I mean, Warren County is the 11th or 12th largest in terms of population, but they're the really little counties. They're counties that have hardly anybody there, and they don't have a large staff to make things happen, to make things more complex for them. They really have a hard time coping with that.
And they look towards it. We, I think it was maybe 3-4 months ago, we had somebody from Highland County, from their records management archiving team come over here, and they're only 2 people compared to, and they learned from us. And yes, it's very.
but they the idea of them being able to handle some of the craziness that's proposed. Come on, I mean. Yeah,
it's the little things, the domino effect, or even like a little bit of a butterfly effect in there. Just fun times. Speaking of little changes, how was the transition between printing tax boards and going to digital? That's happened in between your time, or?
We really can't. I can't say we've gone digital.
Right.
We particularly during COVID have really tried to encourage people and make it easy for people to pay electronically. That is easier for us to process. We can do that quicker and more efficiently, because we get a file in and the IT people post it. So from our end, it's much easier to do that. There are a lot of people that really like to come and pay cash. They go to the bank and they get cash. They come out of the bank and come here and give us cash, and we turn around and take cash back to the bank. But there's something about that satisfies people. I don't understand, but it's not my job to understand. we don't take Bitcoin, but we take cash.
Mm-hmm. Cash is still king.
It is. We have encouraged that. We've encouraged people. We've tried to provide resources on the web that are easy for people to use, and where the county's website with regard to the property search and the information that's available there to people is almost unmatched across the state in terms of everything that's there if they just go in and look.
Yeah.
And that's a deliberate choice. I think that provides better service to people. It certainly relieves us of a certain level of folks just coming in and asking questions, which just makes the day go smoother.
Yeah.
We're certainly not entirely digital. We are emailing bills to people who request that. We find that when people sell their property, they don't bother to change that, and so because we don't get a notice, the new owner is sometimes left in the cold on that. We're pretty generous about remitting late payment penalties there, but Ohio law is real clear. We're obligated to send a bill out. I'm obligated as the treasurer to send a bill out, but it's presumed in the code that a property owner knows that they will owe real estate taxes, and given that they know they will owe them, they have an obligation to find out what they owe and find out when it's due and pay it on time. Yeah. And so there's a shared responsibility there that a lot of people are under the mistaken impression that if they don't get a bill, they don't have to pay. Well, they know for a fact if they've got a mortgage on their property, whether they get a bill or not, they got to pay. Or whether if they're getting power and light or water, they know they owe and they got to pay. Whether they get a bill or not, if they don't get a bill, they know they better be asking about it. And somehow I don't understand why real estate taxes are thought of any differently than that, but I see that over and over again.
Sounds like people just don't want to hear it.
A whale of a lot of that going on. Just a whale of a lot of that going on. But it's we have tried to make it work well for folks, work easily for folks. We've done everything we know how to do that. Frankly, the little drop box that we put on the wall in the lobby.
Yeah.
In terms of cost effectiveness, has been absolutely the most cost effective thing we've ever done. That gets a lot of use. People come in there and they drop their payment and they know they don't have to worry about the post office losing it. They know it's here. Mm-hmm. We pick it up. They don't have to wait in line. It's a wonderful little tool, and it really wasn't very expensive.
Yeah, saves you time too. You don't have to deal with numerous interactions with somebody just wanting to drop something off.
Right. It's that we encourage people to try to use those.
Yeah, it's the little things that really save a lot more time that people think about.
Yeah, and little things really do add up when you've got as many as we do. But I feel like I've contributed to. I've been a little bit more aggressive in investing the county's portfolio than was before. I think that's produced a little extra income for the county. I haven't tried to quantify that, but I'm convinced that it's there. Yeah. I'm confident that my successor will continue to do good things for the county and continue to contribute to the fact that Warren County really is one of the best run counties in the state.
And you feel like he's ready?
Yeah. Come on. He's a certified public accountant who's been a managing partner of a regional accounting firm. He's managed people, he's handled money, he's got the skills that are necessary. And he wants to do the job.
That's what you want?
This is what it needs.
Do you think you're going to be on the phone with him at all during your retirement?
I'm certainly going to be available to him. I doubt that he'll call. But, you know, that's clearly up to him. I certainly will be available to him.
Fair enough. I remember asking Larry Sins before he retired.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, hey, do you think if Barry will call you or anything, ask you for help, will you help him out? I was like, no, just tell him to leave me alone.
Well, I will be in North Carolina, so it's not like I'm going to be around the corner or you'll run into me at the parlor for lunch or something. But
That'd be a phone call away.
But yeah, I mean, the phone, basically, I live with the phone. That's just the way life is these days.
Oh yeah. Oh, so much phone. And speaking of, burgeoning technology, what's the, we talked a little bit about the CAMA system that deals with appraisal,
yes.
comma?
Yes.
CAMA.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
That's the way Matt pronounces it. I mean, it's the whole real estate management system.
Mm-hmm.
And
it deals with appraisals.
It's where, okay, it's where they establish through the system and keep records of values for all of the property.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not intimately familiar with the auditor's side of that.
Right.
What I know goes into it is there's an analysis that's done about how old is the structure, what kind of structure is it in high quality, medium quality, low quality constructed material, how old is it, and therefore how depreciated is it. Mm-hmm. All of those things go into determining the value. How does it fit? Neighborhoods tend to be subdivisions built by a builder at a particular time.
Yeah.
So they all have a certain age, and they were generally built to a certain level of quality finish, and some places have all marble top counters, other places it's all formica.
Right.
So the mass appraisal process looks at those kinds of factors, looks at the square footage of each property, looks at whether there's a basement or not, whether there's first floor values are per square foot are higher than second floor values because there's a set of stairs to get to it. All of that's factored into the program, and a value comes out for each property. Matt targets and works hard to try to get every value within 10% of what it would actually sell for, and he shoots for like 92 to 95% of what it would sell for, so that when somebody comes in and argues about their value, would you sell it for that? And or if you got this for it, would you consider that a fair price? I mean, those are questions that regularly come up. Those are the kinds of questions that come up when they're in front of the Board of Revision, and we're having a hearing.
Yeah.
When somebody comes in and says my house should only be taxed at $200,000 and it's on the books for $350, Matt will say, well, would you pay $200 for it? I'll make you an offer right now. and he's really upfront about that, and I'm sure he'd do it, because if it's worth $350 and he can get this guy to sell it for $200, he'll take the money and run.
It's very straightforward.
Yes.
And that's a good way to put it.
Well, come on, this guy is trying to argue under oath that that's what it's worth,
Yeah.
and if he's not willing to sell it for that, well, that certainly says something about what it might really be worth.
Too true. Too true.
So, you know, so the CAMA system takes care of that. Then it keeps track of our payments that go into it. If people pay, and you know, there's a history record of what the payments have been and whether, you know, when they were made, so that, you know, we got some idea whether they were delinquent in the past or whether they were paying on time, and special assessments, and on and on and on.
Yeah. Oh, that's all put together.
That's part of what the system does. It's a challenge to get all of that to work together.
Yeah. And hopefully the CAMA system will
Mm-hmm.
keep it all together. So
Yes.
CAMA, CAMA.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any particular coworkers or managers that you've worked with in the past that you'd like to shout out?
Matt's outstanding. He's probably one of the best state auditors in the state. The county's very fortunate to have him. My boss at the bank, Howard Wilson, was outstanding. He played me like a fiddle. When I came and started at the bank, I said something about the trust department contributing, and he said, "Oh, the trust department will never make money." And so I worked hard and put in the extra hours and built the business, and we made money. And so we're making money. And a couple of years in, I said something about it was nice that we, you know, could make money for the bank. And he said, "Oh, you'll never make as much money as return check fees." It was just very smoothly moved the goalposts.
Just egging you on.
And so what did I do? I spent time making that happen. I mean, he was really good at it. The other thing, you know, he taught me a lot of stuff. Another thing, it was never a problem to acquaint him with a problem that you were having, whether you created it or whether it was, you know, somebody else's creation and you were trying to live with it. He was happy to hear about it from you. It was better if he heard about it and you had a proposed solution. Okay, that was there was an increment there.
Mm-hmm.
But you, by golly, absolutely did not want him to hear from someone outside the bank that there was a problem. Because if that was yours and you hadn't told him it was coming, you were in for a rough stretch of road.
Yeah.
I mean, you know.
You don't want to be the last to know on the road.
Well, he didn't want surprises. You know, problems were fine. Surprises were a bad thing in capital letters with italics. You know, I felt like he taught me how to run an operation, and I think and he ran an exceptionally well-run bank, and we, you know, those of us who became shareholders benefited from that. I think the community benefited from that. I mean, that's why the bank is where it is today. They had that kind of foundation built. I mean, all those guys that are running the bank now are people that Howard brought in.
Yeah. Standing on the shoulders of giants, right?
That's really what it is. Both of those people were very significant to me.
Man, I know we talked about numerous different projects, but is there any other memorable projects you'd like to highlight?
Well, I really, you know, I really haven't got any. I've always seen myself as a guy who kind of worked in the background. I never felt a huge need to be out front. I've certainly worked to make things happen, but it was real embarrassing what Sinclair did for me, did to me.
That's one of the few things I actually saw of you talking was during the dedication. Please go into it.
You know, Sinclair, after I was off the board and you know, well into my term as the county treasurer, put my name on a building down there at the Mason campus and called it the Bernard H. Wright Jr. Center, and adopted a board resolution saying that they thought that my contributions were significant to creating that, and that my name should be recorded there in perpetuity. I just worked at what was in front of me. I mean, I just tried to be a good steward. I mean, you know, this is there are assets and responsibilities that you're entrusted with, and you're supposed to do well with them to accomplish what needs to be accomplished there. And so it was that was not something that I sought, or that's not something that particularly motivates me. What motivates me is actually seeing good things happen. And you know, Sinclair changes people's lives. The difference between what people make as a student there before they graduate versus what they make after they graduate with the certifications that they can get there is just remarkable. I mean, it changes the entire family trajectory for economically. That's significant. Yeah. And I don't need my name on a building. The fact that we have been able to be part of a group of people that helped other folks get into a whole different part of the world financially, that's fine. That's enough. That I don't need anything more. That's enough. The folks that benefit from that, the knowledge that I have that they're doing better is enough for me.
I mean, that's fantastic. I could say I graduated from Sinclair's main campus.
Mm-hmm.
My mother did too, to get a degree later back in life.
Mm-hmm.
Met numerous people going back there. I was so influenced by Sinclair that during my internship, after getting one of my degrees at Wright State, to go to their archives and start working through there. Mm-hmm. So I get it. It's changed me for the better, and I don't have any serious debts as I might have otherwise going to different university or college or what have you. And
absolutely. I mean, it's, you know, more education, cheaper, faster. I mean, that's their mantra. More education, more folks, cheaper, faster.
Absolutely.
And they're remarkable. They are clearly among the very best in the country. Yeah. They are the oldest, but the oldest continuously operating. But they are, in addition to just old, they are among the best at accomplishing those things. This is.
It's very true. I have a friend that was their nursing program itself takes forever for some people to get through, but once they get through it, it's renowned.
The dramatic difference several years ago, as I was coming off the board, I got the numbers. The year before they graduate, the average nursing student Now this was, like I say, this was 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
The average nursing student was showing less than $18,000 a year in income. The year after they graduated, they're showing $35,000 a year on average. And if they were in the surgical nursing program, they were starting at $65,000 a year. Now this is 10 years ago. I haven't talked with anybody about current numbers. I really kind of want to do that, but this is the kind of thing that changes the trajectory of your life.
Yeah.
To have those kind of income opportunities open up to you because you've got the certificate.
Absolutely, it opens doors.
Mm-hmm.
It opens doors. What are some of the other highlights you'd like to talk about of your time in the county?
Well, my wife's family has been involved with things for a long time. After her grandmother died, several years later, she was elected to be a member of the board of the Harmon Civic Trust. She about 5 years ago decided that she needed to step off and asked me to take over her role there. Her grandmother had been involved with the trust, looking at minutes that I saw back in the 20s, and was treasurer at least in the early 40s, and was a member until she died in 77. So the family has had a long history with the Civic Trust. Sarah Williams, Sarah's grandmother, was not one of the original trustees when Mr. Harmon created the trust, but really very shortly after, she starts showing up in various things related to the trust's operation. Long history with the family. I always felt like that was a really remarkable organization that did really good things for this community. The recreational opportunities that are presented have been outstanding, and it's been a joy to be connected with that. Knowing that I'm leaving town when my term's up, I've transitioned off of that board, but that's good. I mean, that's what has to happen. I really couldn't be an appropriate member of that group from that distance, from that distance away.
Mm-hmm.
I am trustee of the Loeb Foundation. Dr. Loeb was a doctor, a medical doctor, practiced in Dayton, and then after he retired, he was a medical director at Otterbein Home for a while. He and his wife had one child who died in infancy, and he'd been successful. He accumulated property, both land and investment assets, and when he died in 91, his wife had predeceased him. He established the Loeb Foundation, which is set up to provide for improved police and fire protection in the rural areas of Warren County, and to help elderly indigent individuals remain in their own home. And so Mike Foley and I and the LCNB were established as the trustees. Michael passed away here a year or so ago, 2 years ago now maybe. And so the bank and I are now the ongoing trustees. The fund was about $3 million when Doc died. It's now worth about $6.5 million, and we give away around $300,000 a year for those causes. So we give money to the police the police departments in Deerfield and Clear Creek townships, and fire departments in Deerfield, Clear Creek, Turtle Creek Fire. You know, the court decided after Doc died, we went and got a decision. The unincorporated areas in Warren County are what are considered rural, and so all of the departments that serve those rural areas, we make grants to each year. And then Doc wanted to help people keep from being forced to move into nursing homes, and so he didn't want support for Meals on Wheels. He was real specific about saying that, but people had a one-time expense. So we've replaced a well pump that went out. You know, we've remodeled bathrooms so that people have walk-in bathtubs. We've installed indoor plumbing, literally on a house several years ago, but a house down in Loveland. A lady lived there for 80 years. She was born there, and she was still using an outhouse.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah, you know, that's clearly in violation of all kind of code, but but that was what was happening. We put air conditioning units in for folks that have got asthma problems. We've replaced any number of furnaces that have gone out in the winter. We've got a regular process for doing that throughout the year, and then at the end of the year we meet and make grants to the police and fire. At the end of the trust's fiscal year, we meet and make grants for police and fire protection. And we've given away basically every year since Doc died something over $300,000. So, you know, it does good work, and it's been a privilege to be part of that. And you know, I'm thankful that Doc recognized that Mike and I would be helpful contributors to doing that for him, to follow on with that. That feels like a significant trust that, you know, is rewarding.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't get a lot of headlines, and that's fine. You know, it just does damn good work.
Absolutely.
For folks who need it.
Yeah, anything like that would help. My grandmother, who lives in Greene County, she relies on the area on aging up there often, and that would, yeah, she's very thankful for that. And it's just a sign that she wasn't aware of until more recently. It's wild. The next question is, did anything significant happen during your time in the county? But we could go into COVID there if you like. It's up to you. It's,
you know, when you take cash payments, you can't work remotely. Yeah. It's just not in the cards. We got the county maintenance folks are outstanding. They established plexiglass screens around my people. I've got, I have everybody, almost everybody working for me is in the significantly compromised category, because either they've got medical problems or they're over the age. Okay, I mean that's just what I've got.
Right.
And so we're fortunate that we were well spaced out. We went to we modified our standard procedures so that people came in half-time, and that alternated so that somebody doesn't get sick and make everybody else sick.
Right. That would just completely diminish the operation.
And we, you know, and we kept on through COVID. We made it. We didn't have a problem. We continued to provide the service that's necessary to take care of the county.
Well, that's a relief. Nobody came down with any major illnesses during that time?
No, not at all.
But
I think, you know, I mean, I think People were asked to wear masks.
Yeah.
People were asked to social distance on the other side of the line. But we got plexiglass screens up. Frankly, we kept them up. I mean, I know other places have taken them down, but we kept them up. And my gut feeling is people haven't gotten colds as much. I mean, you know, the airflow has not permitted the spread of stuff.
Right. It protects the staff and
Right.
and not only from other not only from COVID from other diseases.
But from other stuff too.
That's fair. I went to the hospital the other day, not for any particular reason, but to visit an uncle, and I wore a mask because I'm like, it's a hospital. It's gonna be dirty. I don't want to get sick.
And you know, out of respect for the people that are there, if I've
Yeah.
got something that I don't know about, I know they don't want me to give it to them.
Right.
And they're there clearly. If they're there, they're at higher risk. There's already something going on with them that is overloading their system.
Mm-hmm.
They don't need something else.
Right. I think that's very fair.
So yeah, no, we survived pretty well, and we don't encourage remote work. I mean, I don't. You can't take payments remotely. I'm sorry.
That's what I was wondering if you guys ever dabbled with that at all.
No.
Some people just can't. That's fair.
I mean, I could have given people access at home to all of the information for the electronic payments.
Mm.
Our experience was it wasn't necessary, and frankly, it worked better to have people come in the office because then there are more folks to answer the phones when they call, and we didn't have to worry about trying to patch phones through to other places. I mean, I know all that stuff can be done. There's a lot of work associated with that, and there's certainly an added risk of some kind of misfeasance, malfeasance, or nefarious activity that swipes information. You know, we just avoided all of that, and I'm real comfortable with that.
Do you think your decision would have changed if it wasn't middle of March? Like say it hit in, I don't know, summer or fall of 2020 as opposed to...
You know, it lasted for well over a year.
Yeah.
I mean, we lived through all of it.
Mm. What do you think you learned most about working for the county?
Real cooperative working together is significant and not necessarily doesn't automatically happen.
You got to work at it.
And you gotta pay attention to it. It doesn't just fall into place. It happens because people have decided this is the right way to do things. Mm-hmm. And then there's some work involved in that. I'm not sure how that plays out in the rest of my life in terms of my experience, but certainly it's given me something to talk about.
I mean, with all the boards, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
What are you gonna miss most about working for the county?
The people. They're good people here. I mean,
Absolutely.
people are not stepping on each other because they're moving on to something else. Okay, people here are here because they're doing a good job, and they want to take care of the people of Warren County. That seems to show up pretty much everywhere I look around here.
The art of being a public servant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the right kind of public servant,
Mm-hmm.
rather than pigs at the trough.
Yeah. I know we've been talking a little bit about retirement, and it doesn't seem like you quite know what you want to do, but do you have any ideas as of yet? Short term, maybe?
We'll have to see what opens up.
Mhm.
I have an idea for developing some real estate. I think I've got a place that I might do it. I'll put up a building and see if I could sell off units in it. I think, I don't know what all the costs will be. I got a lot of research to do before I move forward with it. Part of me would like to get another truck to replace the parade vehicle that I had that got destroyed last July, just before the 4th of July parade.
Oh, what happened with that?
Well, after I got elected, most everybody, many public officials have some kind of a parade vehicle, generally a
Sure.
convertible that they go to parades in. I don't like convertibles. I decided that what I really wanted was a truck, and I found a 1951 Ford F1 that was basically all original, and no backup lights, no turn signals, no power steering, no power brakes, no seat belts. It was original.
Yeah.
And I bought it as a parade vehicle because it had been repainted.
Mm-hmm.
It was remarkable. I mean, it was a fun vehicle. It was fun to drive. I mean, basically you had to put on your extrovert every time you got in it because everybody's honking and waving at you, and so you just
Absolutely.
get at it. So I had a lot of fun with it. I was getting ready for the 4th of July parades and gave my keys to John Russell, who's worked on family cars for 3 generations. And 4 generations actually, but anyhow, he was taking it from my garage over to his shop on Orchard Avenue here, and a lady came left to center, hit him head on, and totaled it. I think she totaled her car too.
Oof.
Gave him a concussion, broke a couple of ribs. He's only 82.
Oh my goodness.
So
You don't want any of that by the time you hit 80 something.
yeah,
Goodness.
but anyhow, it totaled it. I'd kind of like to get one of my goals. I pretty much decided I was going to sell it after the 4th of July parades last summer because I don't have a place to park it down there, and now that it's gone, I miss it because it's one of the things about driving it was you had to pay attention. I mean, you couldn't be listening to the radio. You really couldn't be carrying on a conversation. You got to pay attention to what's going on
It's a lot more knobs.
because it requires it. I mean, it was a 4-speed manual, and it was fun to drive, and I enjoyed those times. And taking it out on a Sunday afternoon on a nice day, it just was a joy. But after it's been gone a while now, I'm beginning to look, and I can't find anything like it so far. Everything that I find has been turned into a hot rod.
Yeah.
I mean, they've dropped a big engine in it. It's got an automatic transmission and air conditioning, and they put bucket seats in. And I mean, come on, man, that's not what I'm getting a truck for. I'm getting a truck to have an old truck. I mean, this was basic transportation, and it's it's not supposed to be.
No, not supposed to have
cruising.
flames on the sides.
It's just not. So I don't know. We'll have to see. But
there's car shows up in Dayton, but
I know.
you're probably going to find half those things are going to be
no,
hot rods, like you said.
Pretty much all of them.
Yeah.
Every time I've gone, they are, and so we'll see what happens. I'll probably wait until I'm down in North Carolina to explore that further, but I still need to find a place to park the thing. And so what I'm thinking about is I found a condominium unit here in town. It's 12 commercial warehouse spaces.
Oh.
They're most people have used. Most of them have been bought by people who want a place to store their stuff.
Yeah.
One of the things that is regularly ends up in them is somebody has a mobile home, their RV unit. They don't want to park that in their garage at the house. They want some place to park it, and they want it enclosed so it's. And you can go to one of these storage places, but you only rent there. You don't own it. It's not it's not yours, and you don't get anything from it. You just pay rent. And when I look, there's no place that I can see down near where being North Carolina, that has anything like this. And so I think maybe there's a market for putting one up and selling off the units. If I could sell off, if I could sell off 11 and keep one as my profit.
There you go.
Then I'd have a place to park a truck.
I've noticed a lot of those coming up. A lot of my family lives up north, so Dayton, and they're going up north to Trotwood area, and there's I-75 on the west side. They're putting a 2-3 story type of storage unit stuff there, and I always see passing in Waynesville on that end too. I think there's definitely a market for that. People want to keep way too much stuff, and so they want to store it. But I'm thinking something bigger, as a unit. But then basically sell it off, and maybe I can make a nickel. Who knows? We'll see. And certainly then, find out where I might fit in the community in terms of service, whether that's through church. In the past, activities in the local church have been a significant part of what I've devoted time to. But then we'll see about other things. I mean, I just need to be open to where the Lord leads. Very true. Very true. What advice would you like to give to current Warren County employees?
You're public servants. Do your job. Do them well. There really isn't anything else to say. As an employee, you have somebody you're accountable to, and whether you're a public employee or a employee in a private business. If you're running your own show, you can decide when you want to hustle and when you don't. When you're working for somebody, you've got a responsibility to do things, to do it right, to get it done for your employer. That's what you're getting paid for.
Yeah.
If you don't like that, go find a place where you can work for yourself, but don't feel like you're entitled. I mean that's not appropriate in my opinion. And my experience has been that you really don't move up unless you give more than is expected. And so if you want things to get better, you got to put in more than you take out. That's just the way the world works.
Yeah, there's reason to that. there's reason that. Is there any additional information you'd like to talk about? Anything else you'd like to put in?
That's good. I'm not sure anybody really have any great desire to look at this anyway, but
You never know.
It's
know.
Possibilities are out there, I suppose.
Absolutely. Well, on that, I suppose I'll conclude this. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me.